There is this scene where he feels that his friend is betrayed because of the religion and because he sees him suddenly as a Muslim, and that identity actually has played no role in his life, you know, because he never, that's not one of his identities, that's his main identity. And yet his friend has seen him like that. And later on there's a scene which is a fictional scene where Safiya says that गुस्से में तो हर कोई कुछ कह देता है. You know, in anger one does say things, and she basically means you're a writer, you should be knowing. And he says कि उसने जो कहा उससे, I'm not worried about, it's not that that's bothering me. मैं भी ऐसा कर सकता हूँ, मैं भी ऐसा कह सकता हूँ, because we are all capable of bringing out our prejudices in moments of stress or moments of strife. But what really troubled him was that a human being can do this, is capable of this. That is what really bothered him. And I think those were the questions. There were times when people have congratulated, you know, me for quoting something from Manto, in the sense that it's not even Manto's line, it's, let's say it's my line. And they said, हाँ वो Manto का बहुत अच्छा आपने वो इस्तेमाल किया. मैंने कहा, sorry, I take it as a compliment. वैसे वो मेरी line थी. So अब तो the line between fact and fiction also in the film, for me, has also blurred so much, having done many drafts of the script.
Yet it's true. I mean, those of you who've seen her film, I mean, Manto, will realize that there is a very strong resonance between the way in which Manto wrote about his characters and, you know, with all the warts, with all the ups and downs, with all the contradictions, all the, as I said, the capacity for extreme kindness and extreme violence and cruelty. And likewise, if you look, at the way in which she has shown Manto, there is a certain raw honesty. She hasn't compromised on that. She hasn't whitewashed him. He was a person who offended everyone in a most secular way, friends and detractors and supporters. And he hurt people, he hurt himself, he worked against himself. I mean, he was a bit of a mess because of the times. There was ultra-sensitive. So constantly, every significant upheaval was tending to disturb his equilibrium. And she made sure that she didn't shy away from that. And yet, that empathetic quality, that you may disagree with what Manto is doing, the choice that he's making, but you understand why he's making it. That I found very beautiful, which I've mentioned once also from the stage earlier.
I think also, what do you want the audience to feel? Right? I think empathy, like you said, I think empathy is a beautiful word, because it's almost like you're putting yourself in that person's shoes, right? And to be able to feel empathetic to someone that you may not even agree with, or someone who you think is the other. I think that's what he manages to do in his stories. And in some way, if we can do that through our films, that is what we want. And also, he questions our morality. He's almost asking us that, so what is more important to you? The fact that I drink, that I speak rudely, or the fact that I fight for truth? Right? We are all judgmental. We all say that, oh, you know, this person's like this and that. I mean, if there was today a Manto, he would be a difficult person to deal with. Imagine someone's telling you the truth all the time, especially in a world where we have kind of made lying, we don't call it lie, we call it civility, we call it politeness, we call it, you know, all of that. We don't really speak as much truth as we all want to. So in that sense, I felt that he also questions our morality as to what is more important to us. And I think that is also very powerful in Manto's works as well.
Okay, this is a book release function, by the way. It's not a premiere of a film we've been talking about.
No, actually, whether it's the film conversation, whether it's the book conversation, I was just telling Anjum before this, we end up talking about Manto. The person who's asking me talks about Manto, and I get completely passionate about talking about Manto. And I forget my own film and the book. But to me, they're all the same. I mean, you know, like I said, it's a means to an end. This book is an excuse so that we can talk about Manto and our times.
Yeah, so I'm going to draw you to the book, because from the book, if you want, we can always go to
right,
Manto.
Exactly.
But let's focus on the book right now. I'm going to ask you very directly, Nandita. This is a gargantuan effort, okay, which has gone into it. And it's huge. I was going through it, and she was well, she's a friend, so I can't even say that she's generous enough because she better be generous with me. Okay, so she did gift
I've
me,
gifted it, yeah.
the book in a
Sorry,
very
it's a bit
special way.
expensive because
It
it's got
is,
lots of
yeah.
photos. I got a bit carried away.
Yeah. It's beautiful and it's very, it's there's a warmth in the book. I mean, whatever little I could read in half an hour,
It's
I
like
could
this
feel that.
conversation. It's just storytelling,
Yeah.
so you'll have to pardon me for all the what's in that too.
No, it's beautiful. Now,
But
let me
it's-
ask you very directly. What do you expect this book to do?
I mean, I'll have to, it's a direct question, but I'll have to give an indirect answer, which is that my father is a painter. So I remember the time when, he would paint at home, and he's also very Manto-esque. There are lots of, too many similarities with Manto, and I've written a little about that. I would enjoy the way he would paint. It's not just seeing the final painting, but the process of it. I remember he would take us to music concerts, and sometimes we were early. He would tell me and my brother to sit in the wings and, see them rehearse. And we used to be bored because we were little children and said, okay, we have to now sit this person rehearsing, and they're going, and there's tuning and this and that. But all of that comes back, that there is so much, there's something that you take from the journey of an artist. You see the art, but how they reach there and what are their ups and downs is fascinating. I've always been interested. I'm a very journey person anyway. So I think it was more of that I felt that if you've seen the film, or if you haven't seen the film, but you're intrigued by the journey of the artist, and if you think that, for me, art and artists are very inseparable. So if you have liked the film, or if you have questions about the film, maybe some of that will be answered. Just to see from the inception of why Manto, to the research, to the writing, to how do you raise funds for this, how do you cast, why did I have so many different actors who very, generously did small roles for nothing, how do you recreate the times? How do you create Bombay in today's modern day clutter? How do you do Lahore, of all places, in Gujarat? Firak, which was set in Gujarat, I shot it in Hyderabad because I didn't want to be a martyr and I wanted to finish the film. But, I ended up doing Manto in Gujarat and got amazing amount of support from the villagers, despite feeling that I may not be. In fact, there's a story about that when we were preparing in this small place called Vaso, I had told the team, let's not call it Lahore because, we might get beaten up or something. Let's just call it Delhi. And हमेशा मेरे ही मुंह से ला ऐसे निकल जाता था. So I said, let's call it Lucknow. At least la निकल गया तो लखनऊ बोल देंगे. And in a few days, all the villagers knew that we were shooting this film on Manto, and they didn't know who Manto was, but this film, which is set in Lahore. So they would, in fact, say that, and I speak Gujarati because I'm half Gujarati, they would say that आप पता Gujarati posters काढ़ी ने उर्दू नाखवा पड़शे ने, meaning ये सारे निकाल के हमको उर्दू डालने पड़ेंगे ना. And I used to say कि हाँ वो करूँ पड़शे. Then I used to think, okay, that means they already know. So so we had, and they would come and take care of us. I lived in that village through the shoot because I have a small child, and the whole team was living in Anand, in another city, Korean city, Amul jahan hota hai. So they were staying there, and I thought, my God, how is he if he wakes up, if I have a night shoot? So I stayed in someone's house in Vaso. So all those kind of stories. What is it to be a woman director? What is it to be a mother and juggling? What was it to take Manto to campuses in the US, in India, to Harvard and Stanford's, but also to JNU and other places in the country. So it's about many different things. It's really the entire 7-year journey, 6 years of making and a year of marketing and distributing, and what are the struggles of independent cinema. That's also there, and some of it will resonate with you as well. So it was cathartic, but that wasn't the only reason. It's not that I just wanted to expunge everything that I was feeling. For me, and I've written that it's not just the creative journey. It's also my emotional journey. It's also my socio-political journey. The reason why I made the film had to be there throughout. It was there throughout. And how did that surface? So it's about many things.
It's true. I mean, even in Hindi cinema, we went through this whole phase of about almost 25, 30 years where it was believed that stories had to be about fantasies, they had to be about things about issues which made the audience feel pleasant, which you came out with a smile, you laughed, you had a good time, and entertainment very narrowly began to be defined as that. Anything which is amusing, which is a distraction, which helps
A
you to
good feel
escape.
film.
Yeah. So it's that sort of thing. And yet now we are beginning to see this resurgence of young people, including Nandita, who's in perhaps in the
Not so
forefront.
young, but yeah.
of- बोलने दे यार. I mean, young ही है तू यार. Look at who's
Relatively,
talking.
just relatively.
So, given this, I'm saying the whole chasm between the filmmaker as a citizen and the citizen as a filmmaker, that chasm is beginning to narrow. Who you are will be reflected in the kind of preoccupations that you have. And that will be reflected quite nakedly on the screen. So you look at her two films, I mean, Firak, once again set against the tumultuous backdrop of the Gujarat carnage, which took place in 2002. Very, very searing story, disturbing, but gripping. And that is the challenge of these people, that you take something which is grim, which is serious, which is bound to disturb your equilibrium, but it has to grip you, it has to hold you so much so that you want to revisit it later on. And that is the beauty of stories. Now you take Manto, and I'm sure she can speak for the next 1.5 hours non-stop about the struggle that she had to go through.
Too many
at
challenges,
every
actually.
single stage. But this is the problem with this girl, it doesn't stop. Now the next one she's doing, I don't know what she's doing, but I can guarantee you, and please just agree with me, yes or no, I mean tell me.
Yes.
Yeah, that it's
That's
going
it.
to be again very difficult to find funding, support, resources to do that. you know.
Yeah.
And this is, of course, I must also say it, and I will say it to her face because I have known her for very long. This is also the extent of the goodwill that Nandita Das actually holds within the film industry and around, that every time that she attempts to do something, it's like Majru Saab's share, that मैं तो अकेला निकल पड़ा जानिब मंजिल, लोग आते गए, कारवां बनता गया. So it's that sort of
Thank
thing
you,
that she...
Anjum. Coming from you, it means a lot. I told him just yesterday, it wasn't, I was supposed to do a talk, because I said I've done enough book events, I'm not going to get again, kisi ki, you have to take favors. I told her, I said, I'll just do a talk and we'll just talk about it. And then yesterday I thought, no, it would be lovely if Anjum does it. Somebody who's a kindred spirit as well. And then I just called him, he said, yeah, I'll do it. So goodwill अब मुझे लगता है wear off हो जाएगी. 2 फिल्मों में ले ली, अब किताब में ले ली. अब
No,
आप
but
लोग
there's-
जरा goodwill बनाए रखिएगा.
There's also a return thing. I mean, every time that she's been asked, and I'm truly expressing my gratitude in public, Nandita, that every time I've asked her for a cause, whether it's the Screenwriters Association or film schools or a conference or the Lit Fest, etc., wherever it is that I have been involved, and I've asked her if she can come, she has always come. So, which is what keeps things sort of rolling. Now, one last question. Again, a delicate question, but see how directly you can...
I'll do it.
yeah.
मंटोयत और बढ़ गई है फिल्म के बाद. पहले भी
Even
थोड़ी
since
थी.
the time that you scripted the film to now, it's not been very long, and yet a lot has happened around us. Today, if you were to be scripting this for the first time, is there anything that you believe would have changed in the film? Anything that would have been emphasized, the proportioning? What is it that would have been done differently?
I think many things would have been done differently, only because when you revisit anything, you want to do it differently. Also, you are a person, right? I'm not the same person I was in 2012 or in 2008. I mean, when I see even my own journey, I started with street theatre in Safdar Hashmi's time, right? So this was, and I remember going for every march, shouting slogans, being an angry person and justifying my anger because it was against injustice. You're supposed to be angry. I'm not so angry as a person. That doesn't mean I don't care about the injustices, but my approach is maybe different. I want to engage more. Even when I did Firak, I could have done a very blame game kind of a thing. I could have done it during the violence. I could have shown much more of the violence. But what interests me more is what lingers on when violence finishes. What interests me is that how do people live in fear? For us to be able to feel the fear that the characters feel. So it's, in a way, there are subtler emotions, and it's, to understand prejudice and these human emotions, guilt. And so even in Firak, it was more a representation of emotions that people were feeling, as opposed to, just saying, okay, how many Hindu characters am I going to take? How many Muslim characters? Whom am I going to show in good light and bad light? I did no balancing. It's also, when you haven't really studied cinema, I've not been as fortunate to be your student or assisted anybody, you also don't know the grammar. I ended up writing both the scripts out of not knowing, and there is an advantage to that. Of course, there is a disadvantage to that as well. So I think I would change. I don't know. I mean, I'm a different person today. It would be difficult if I had to, like, now I'm itching to actually do something which is subtle and all of that, but also something that doesn't need to take refuge in history. Like something that's maybe present, something that's maybe future, but I'd feel like we haven't learned from the past, and I don't know how much we're going to learn. And it's just that I'm feeling, I'm in that state. So obviously how you feel inside and how troubled you are continues. Like I never thought that Manto would be seen as Firak and Manto. A lot of people say that it feels like you're heading to a trilogy because, there is a connection between Firak and Manto, but it wasn't conscious. But those issues that I've tried to deal with in Firak haven't changed. What do? Your concerns are going to remain the same because the world around you is the same. And I just want to add something about the end. What you said about feeling good, how do you end a film? That's something I've struggled with both in Firak and in Manto. That how do you end? Do you end on an optimistic note? Do you tell people that, yeah, everything's going to be fine? But I don't believe that sometimes, and oftentimes, unfortunately. At the same time, I am an optimist because I do believe that pessimism is for the lazy. Cynicism has never moved things. You've got to be hopeful. So it's not so binary as pessimism or being optimistic. You want to leave the audience with a question. You want to leave the audience with some disturbance, as you said, or you want to leave the audience in wanting to do something with it. And again, it wasn't decided, but both in Firak and Manto, they look into camera. And, when I was doing Manto, again, that wasn't... In fact, in Firak's script, it's not even there that the child looks into camera at the end. I don't know if you've seen Firak is also online and for free on YouTube. And I have no shame in these pirated ones, whoever has done it. But, so Firak also, the child looks into the camera, almost asking us that, is this the world you want to leave me with? And in Manto as well, Manto looks into the camera to almost say, who's more insane? Those in the asylum or the world outside? And I've ended with Faiz's poetry. Bol ke lab azad hai tere, bol zuban ab tak teri hai. Which is almost a call to action. So maybe my intent behind it is what I'm actually leaving the audience with. It's neither pessimism nor optimism. But come on now, take the legacy of Manto and run with it. Bring out your Mantoyat, which we all have. So that's the tone and that's the note that I decided to leave the film with.
Excellent. I'm going to throw it open in case you people have some question that you may want to ask. Yeah? Harshil, you have a mic? Yeah.
Just about the poster of the movie.
Sir, if you can also tell me your name.
I'm Nilesh, Steinbander. So I saw the movie on Netflix. Okay. Because nowadays theaters, it doesn't stay for long. So I saw it on Netflix. Yeah. So just about...
complained. That's the only place where I've complained.
Two questions. So one is about the poster, the red, this thing. Is it blood or something else?
Well, it's more a banning sign when you... Okay. But yes, it's a sign of, when you ban, you want to silence somebody. You want to cross them out. But he still keeps looking because he's not going to be crossed out so soon. So that was the idea.
The one, was there any scene censored by the board?
Well, I had a 2.5-hour conversation with the censor board. And at one point I told them, I said, I feel like Manto, what he must have been in the witness box trying to argue his own case. And I said, and some of the words that they objected to were from Manto's writings. And I said, my God, 70 years later, I have to still fight for it. They're not even my words. These are words that he has used. And they had a list of 22 things. So after we fought, there were only 5 audio cuts. And I really see that as a victory. And I see that. And they all individually loved the film. See, that also makes a difference. We are first human beings, then our respective professions. In fact, I was sitting outside and one of them came out and he was going to the loo and he was so moved by it that he just said, thank you, thank you. I was like, okay, that's a good sign. And then when I went in, and they were all trying to be professional, it was wonderful to see that they actually were moved, but they felt like, no, we have to do our job. And I told them, I said, you know, it's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. I know you're the censor board, and I won't take advantage of your vulnerability. But if you're moved, you can stay with that emotion. It's not such a bad thing because we are first all human beings. And then we had this wonderful conversation actually, and there were these 5 words that they said that you replace it. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to replace it. I'm going to mute it. Let the audience know that something has been censored. So I didn't replace it with anything. Those audio cuts I did, but visually they didn't cut anything. And I was also in some ways.
Those 5 words.
अब मैं बोलूँगी तो यहाँ पीप पीप वो जो भी है कैमरा उसमें हो जाएगा. But even things like हरामजादी and all that, I was like कितनी फिल्मों में इससे, I mean, that is the arbitrary nature of censorship. You know, how do you? It has to be in a context. That so many horrendous things we see with U certificate. I got a UA. With U certificate we see, which is very regressive, which is, you know, objectifying women, denigrating things, is really messing up with the mind. I mean, those kind of things get passed. So it's so arbitrary. It's not about these people. They were good people. But it's just the arbitrary nature of censor board where 5 people are going to decide for a 1.3 billion people as to what they should watch. Huh. That's also in the book. If I tell you everything, would you still get the book?
Yeah. So I have a...
Those 5 best stories I'm not going to share, by the way. Just a joke. But yeah, but with the Pakistan censor board, so I had really wanted this film to ideally release both sides of the border on the same day. I tried very hard. I got a good distributor, but it just took forever to, you know, get those processes happening. And finally, they sent a letter saying that this is anti-partition. Anti-partition, and the sexual content is, you know, in fact, if you see, I have had criticism here sometimes saying that Manto was far more graphic and why didn't you show? Did you self-censor yourself? I said, no, I didn't self-censor. I just didn't feel the need to show. I mean, I've been on the other side. I've been an actor where I've been asked to do, let's say, a certain scene, and I feel it's not necessary. That's not the crux of the scene. And our audiences, I'm sorry to say, and our filmmakers and all of us we do not really see films or women, if you show, say, a certain amount of nudity, that's going to grab more attention than anything else. Once we are mature enough to see that, okay, this is required for the scene, you know, then probably it would be different. So therefore, I didn't show, there's actually hardly any sexual content. I mean, even in a story like Khol Do and Thanda Gosht, which very easily could have been sexualized. In fact, in Cannes, a woman walked up to me and said, you could easily see that this film was made by a woman. And I said, why do you say that? He said, oh, a man would have shown much more blood and gore and much more sexual content. She was a French woman who had read Manto, who knew a lot about Manto. And that's why she said a man would have taken all the liberties saying that Manto has shown this or the times are there, and that's why we feel. So that apart, I did try to argue it also with the Pakistani censor board, but because I couldn't go at that time because of our tense situation, and you know, so it never really got released. But the wonderful thing that happened was that writers, students, filmmakers, journalists, they all came to the streets of Pakistan in 5 cities with placards and slogans and protested about the film. I mean, it was insane. I didn't even know, and completely unprompted. I have some photographs of that where they've just taken these posters. Fairz's daughter, Salima Hashmi, and you know, very senior journalists, they all were on streets saying, we want to see this film. Manto belongs to both of us and you can't censor it. And they in fact did a private screening, and they could have really been jailed for it. They did a private screening, and I was talking to them on the phone and I said, are you sure you want to do this? Please don't do this, you know, aapki zindagi ko khatra hai. And they said, nahi, kya hoga? हम उनको कहेंगे आप हमें बाहर से बंद कर दीजिए, हम फिल्म देख के फिर आपसे बात करते हैं, you know. So that kind of support we got there, and now I guess it's on Netflix, and पाकिस्तान में सबसे पहले पायरेट हो जाती हैं हमारी फिल्में. So I'm sure people have watched.
Ma'am.
My name is Purti. Can you please throw some light on the relationship you shared as a director with the actors who were trying to relive the characters?
Yes. So
Yes,
I
all
had
of
thought
them have
of.
performed really well.
Thank you. I think being an actor director also helps a little because you know how to communicate with actors. I've been on the other side, and sometimes you work with great directors, but they don't know how to communicate. And if they do, there's no one way because each of the actors, they're different people. So somebody, like suppose sometimes directors say, you remember your pain of childhood and bring that emotion out. And sometimes it works with actors, and sometimes you're like with me, it doesn't work with me. I would say, but I'm not in that place. I'm here right now. So I want to be able to understand how can I become that person instead of drawing out some other pain that I have felt. So I think that really helped. Also, Nawaz, I had worked with him in Firak. He was my first choice. Rasika was my first and only choice as well. And many of the other actors, I was also being a filmmaker of a film like this, it makes you very shameless. You just go and meet anyone that you think is going to be helpful for the film. So whether it was Rishi Kapoor or Gurdas Maan or Javed Saab, who's never done, so that's why I've sort of cheekily credited him as introducing a kind of a thing, debut, introducing Javed Akhtar. So, well, I took his permission on the phone. I just told him, here is one man in the film who is supporting Manto in the court. And as a progressive writer of today, would you not want to defend a progressive writer of 70 years ago? And he would say, अच्छा कर देते हैं तुम्हारे लिए. So कुछ लोग मंटो साहब के लिए आए, कुछ लोग मेरे लिए आए, कुछ लोग दोनों के लिए आए. But I had a good rapport with my actors, and actors are fragile beings. So having been on the other side and having been on different sets and knowing some of them, made new friends. But the best part of this journey has been that I've just met lots of interesting people who have Mantoyat in them. Because automatically it sort of pulls them. And I don't mean only in cast and crew, but audiences. I mean, there's a different energy in all of you. The fact that you've come here, you didn't have to hear all those announcements. You just kind of, or some of you heard it and came. That also I'm grateful for. But it's just that it has just made me meet a lot of incredibly interesting, passionate people who have this desire to, have convictions, have values, have courage to follow their convictions. So that has made my own life very rich in the last 6 years. 7, 8.
हेलो, गुड इवनिंग. तो बहुत ही प्रसन्नता हुई भाई, आप मैडम ने बहुत अच्छी बुक्स लिखी, फिल्मों में काम किया. इसके लिए हम सब भारतवासी आपको जो है बहुत ही प्रसन्नता से बधाई देते हैं. और जैसे अभी एक मिनट आ गया, तो जैसे अभी एक भाई साहब ने फौज के बारे में कहा, तो
सरकार एक बात पूछो, आप सवाल पूछ रहे हैं इनसे, बिकॉज ये क्वेश्चन आंसर्स का वो है सिलसिला. तो आप अगर वहाँ उनको बोलना है तो अपन बाद में बोल सकते हैं, लेकिन यहाँ आप अगर सवाल है तो पूछिएगा.
हाँ, तो मतलब अब ये आने वाले समय में आप कितनी बुक्स और लिखोगे?
ओहो,
ओके.
आप ये वाली पढ़ने वाले हैं पूरी? जब आप ये पढ़ लेंगे ना, तो मुझे बताइएगा, फिर मैं दूसरी शुरू करूंगी.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
चलिए, थैंक यू. Yeah, please. Yeah, actually, you did have the mic earlier. No.
So my name is Vikram. So I read that Manto wrote his own epitaph. Right. So the point is that he left Bombay with a lot of pain, and he went to Pakistan. And Safia said that he wrote prolifically every day a story almost. So do you think? Sorry, I must talk about the epitaph. So the epitaph says that he wonders at the bottom of his grave who was the greater writer, God or Manto. So do you think, in your opinion, that he really had reached his peak and that was the reason why he said that?
I think he was just very cheeky and provocative. That's my understanding of it. That he was also very irreverent. We sort of सुना होगा उन्होंने बहुत, जब हम लाहौर में थे, it was a new Islamic state, सब कुछ religious हो रहा था. So it was his way of kind of saying that, on the mounds of earth, Manto he's still wondering who is a greater storyteller, God or him. And he knew that his family would never put that epitaph because it looks very arrogant. And, once somebody dies, you don't want to be. Already Manto was not in people's good books. लोग छुप छुप के पढ़ा करते थे मंटो. In fact, Pakistan में they embraced him much later than we sort of, liked him or read him here. At least in the literary circles, in the theatre circles, Manto was a very revered name even much before the film or 2012, before the centenary. But another epitaph, which was more palatable, which was something to the effect that अंग्रेजी में सही नहीं है और उर्दू का भी मेरे पास है नहीं कि वो हरफ़े मुकर्रर, that I'm not a word that can be repeated. I'm on the slate of the world. I'm not a word that can be repeated. Something to that effect. But it was a milder, arrogant statement. But he also liked to provoke people. In fact, एक scene है जिसमें वो कहते हैं कि आप क्यों, why do you provoke all the time? And he says there's anything worth saying is going to be provocative, which is also true to about our times.
At all times. Please.
Good evening, Nandita.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm very
she's
well.
good, yeah.
Thank you.
So am I.
Good to hear that. My name is Jay Dua and I'm from Delhi. I was
जी.
doing modeling long time ago. It's been 2022 years.
माइक जरा मुंह के पास रखिए।
22 साल पहले मैं मॉडलिंग करता था यहाँ पर।
अच्छा,
Then
सब
I
आपको देख रहे हैं
actually-
अब कि अच्छा।
Apart from that, now, I've worked in lots of trades, but couldn't got succeed.
अच्छा।
So you can say jack of all trade, master of none. So now I have specially come to Mumbai from Delhi. I would like to be an actor and I would like to work with such a versatile actor like you.
You know, it's a big dilemma for me.
Let me answer
हाँ।
that. Sir, please माफी चाहूँगा फिर से यार इन किताब के लिए, उनकी फिल्म के लिए अपन यहाँ हाजिर हुए हैं।
Apologize.
तो प्लीज या
नहीं
थोड़ा
फिर
माफी
भी
चाहूँ,
अगर
मैं
थोड़ा सा
समझता
कह
हूँ।
देते हैं इसके बारे में, सिर्फ इतना ही कि बहुत मुझे ऐसे लोग मिलते हैं, मुझे खुद बुरा लगता है। कई ऐसे यंग लोग भी आते हैं कि आई वांट टू बी अ राइटर, आई वांट टू बी अ एक्टर, बिकॉज इट इज़ अ बिग सिटी और लोग अपनी दूसरे काम छोड़ के इस शहर में आ जाते हैं। And it's not an easy place. I don't want to, and I always, in fact, dissuade them, which may seem like, why are you discouraging me? But I don't want to show you this rosy picture. किसी ने कहा था कि बम्बई के कूली बहुत good looking हैं। कहते हैं क्यों? क्योंकि वो सभी शाहरुख खान बनने आए। That's the story. So unfortunately, it is a struggle. So I don't want to give any rosy picture. There's very little that I can do. I'd make so few films anyway.
Can I speak 10 words?
Sorry? You'll have to ask the moderator.
10 words I'm counting. Yeah, go on.
I will shell my blood to become an actor.
As an actor of whatever few films that I've done, I can tell you it's not worth it. There are greater things in this life and world to shed your blood for. So I would appreciate
Yeah, but nonetheless, as a counterpoint, if that is indeed your passion, then I think you should pursue it. Yeah,
That's also true.
Yeah.
See?
So,
Both are true.
Thank you very much. You've been a
Thank you. You've
wonderfully
been an
attentive
amazing audience, yeah.
and you are
And you are fantastic.
Yes,
Thank you
yes,
so much
yes,
for
yes.
doing this.
wonderful. Should we be releasing the book?
Yeah, sure.
No? What,
Yes, yes,
show
yes.
me. You don't mind if we do it, like
Yes,
it's
we wouldn't mind. वो रखी आपके लिए ही।
आप ही कर दीजिए, चलिए। दिखाई दे किताब, जैसे कि यहाँ दिख रही है। ये है किताब, and just to show you a little bit. By the way, I've dedicated it to the Mantos of the world. क्योंकि बहुत सारे मंटो अभी भी हैं, हम उन्हें ज़रा बचाएं, बहुतों को खो चुके हैं। So it's basically, it's got lots of, photographs, stories. It's really the pictures and the images. Aditya Verma, the photographer, और हमारे phones के भी किस जगह में हमने शूट किया,
बहुत ही खूबसूरत किताब है।
तो डिस्काउंट दे रहे हैं आज आप कि नहीं दे रहे हैं? दीजिए डिस्काउंट, मैं भी फोन कर दूँ।
बंद करो।
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Wonderful.
Thank you.